I challenge you to a game of chess. Against the computer. Against the computer. And by the end of this video, I'll show you how you can play a game of correspondence chess against my chess computer right here on YouTube. But first, some context. I wouldn't do that if I were you. You are me, and yet still somehow I don't believe you. Checkmate. What? Told ya. You came out of nowhere. You really are bad at chess. In my last video, I built a chess bot that evaluated the best moves possible by just brute forcing the numbers. No chess wisdoms or strategies, no human intuition, just pure objective calculations. It didn't work. It didn't perform as well as expected. It was a complete failure. So I decided to give in and add the chess smarts I was trying to avoid. How do you add chess smarts to a computer? Well, that's what we're gonna look at today. I added some better guidelines into my chess computer and got it to play a lot better. Then I challenged my chess friends to play against the computer in order to see what they thought of it. You said they could play too. Right. And by the end of this video, I'll show you how you can challenge my computer to a game of chess right here on YouTube. But enough talk, more data. It's data time!
I'm data.
In my last video, I was able to build a chess engine that didn't really know how to play chess, even though it understood all of the valid chess moves, except for en passant. And of course, castle. Castle! Castle! Wait, so why is castling so bad? So, castling is one of the most bizarre and complex moves in chess. Honestly, I don't even think I learned it when my dad taught me how to play chess as a kid. Castling is the only move that shifts two pieces at once, the king and the rook. And how you shift them depends on which rook you choose to shift with the king. That doesn't seem too bad. But the really confusing thing is discovering when castling is even valid, as there are several conditions you have to satisfy. First of all, neither the king nor the rook can have ever moved previously in the game. There can be no other pieces between the king and the rook. The king cannot be currently in check, and none of the squares that the king passes through during the move can be attacked by an enemy piece. That's a lot of particular rules. Yeah. The most difficult one is the first condition, ensuring neither the king nor rook has ever moved. I never bothered to add any state logic to my computer. You mean you don't keep track of previous moves? That's right. So the computer never knows if the king or rook has ever moved. Even the fen notation, which represents an entire board in one text string, has to add annotations for castling. Uppercase K if white can castle kingside, uppercase Q if white can castle queenside, lowercase k if black can castle kingside, and lowercase q if black can castle queenside. If neither side has the ability to castle, it's represented as a dash. That's a lot of extra letters for just one move. Exactly. So I decided to invest my time elsewhere. So then what are you gonna change? The first thing I can do is optimize my search graph using some predictions. Predictions? Are you predicting the future? Well, yeah, I suppose in some ways I am. I'm predicting what my opponent's moves will be in response to my moves. Can you predict assassinations? You mean like the opponent killing my king? Yeah. Can you predict natural disasters? Natural disasters? We're playing chess here. This isn't like predicting earthquakes. Earthquakes. In my last video, I talked about how I use the minimax search algorithm with alpha-beta pruning in order to look ahead several turns to discover the best possible moves. Alpha-beta pruning works best if the good moves are evaluated before the bad moves. Once it determines that all subsequent moves in a branch are worse than what it already has, it can prune that branch. So let's see if we can sort the moves in order based on how good we think each move will be. If we have a move where we capture a valuable enemy piece using a less valuable piece, then that is a great move. A pawn that takes a queen is best. Next, if we have a move where a pawn is about to be promoted, then that is also great, because in one move, we get a huge boost in our material. Finally, if we can see that a move places one of our pieces at risk from an enemy pawn, then that is a terrible move and should be evaluated last. We don't want one of our pieces to be captured, especially by a pawn. Okay, this optimizes the search process a bit, but we still have trouble with the opening. The computer still just moves pieces back and forth. Why does it do that? Because it can find a move that leads to a capture. Remember, the whole evaluation is based on discovering captures and determining which ones are best. At the beginning of the game, there aren't any captures. If you can't look far enough ahead to find any captures, then all moves look the same. So I'm going to adjust our evaluation function to include more chess smarts. In general, we want to move our pawns forward, we want to keep our king back, and we want the other pieces to control the center of the board. So in addition to the evaluation function that scores how many pieces have been captured, I also added a score for each piece based on its position on the board. For example, a pawn is worth 10 points, but if it moves forward 1 square, I now consider it worth 11 points. Moving forward increases its score. This incentive is slight so as not to overcorrect the problem. If a pawn moves forward and is captured by an enemy, all of its points will be lost. So this is really just a useful incentive when no captures are present. Thanks again to Sebastian Lague for these great tips on how to optimize the process. Okay, now I've gotten the computer to play pretty well. It moves its pieces forward and knows how to make threats to the opponent while defending itself against enemy attacks. It's perfect! Oh, far from it. Its endgame is still terrible. It doesn't seem to understand that if the enemy checks, then we need to move out of check. It thinks that the enemy will delay check until the edge of the computer's look-ahead horizon. The fix I have for this is to just reduce my look-ahead at the end of the game. This is pretty terrible, but honestly, I'm not sure the computer will even make it that far into the game. Time to punt! This has already taken a huge amount of time and effort, and it's time to test this against real human chess players. 2 of my friends who are avid chess players were really interested in seeing how my computer would play against them. So I challenged each of them to a chess match against my computer. First up, I challenged my friend Long. It's chess time!
My name is Long, and I played chess pretty few years ago during high school. So I don't think I'm rated, like not playing very seriously.
So how do you expect you're gonna do today? What are your anticipations?
Against a computer, program by Peter, I think I'm gonna get in trouble.
You're gonna get in trouble.
Yeah.
Begin! H4. Is that surprising?
Yeah.
Is it?
Our castle.
Castle, okay. Castle! You have hit one of the blind spots it has, which it doesn't know about castle, but it'll readjust. It'll just go for it anyhow.
I noticed everything is very symmetrical on the other side of the board.
I didn't notice that, but you're right. In fact, it's perfectly symmetrical.
Let me try something.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. It didn't do what I thought it was going to do.
What do you think it was going to do?
I thought it was going to take your knight.
That would be a critical mistake.
What I hadn't seen was discovery check. After Long placed his knight in a threatening position, I could have taken it with my knight. If I had, I would be removing my knight from a position of protecting my king. Then Long could have moved his bishop to threaten my queen, while simultaneously exposing his rook to my king, which is a discovery check. I then would have a situation where both my queen and king would have been threatened. In order to move my king out of check, I would have to lose my queen. The computer had correctly avoided the trap that I had overlooked.
I will take using my bishop.
Did it see that coming? Yes, it did. It expected you to do that.
Okay.
Let's see now if it takes the piece. Nope, it's not going to take your piece. It's going to move its knight.
Oh wow, that's smart.
Once again, the computer did not fall for this discovery check trap. Instead, it moved its knight to intercept the attacking rook in order to free up the other knight to move away. B1.
Yeah, I was curious, so I didn't take pawn a3. I'll move the rook.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's an aggressive player. It's never trying to really
Attack me?
Yeah.
Oh wow, it's moved the kings now.
Yeah, that seems like a bad decision.
I don't know, let's see. I check you here.
Okay. So I'm taking your bishop.
Yeah, and I'll knight will take your rooks. And I expect the king will take.
Oh no, I thought you were going to take this pawn, which I don't know why you would think that.
Yeah, it's the rook is more.
Okay, so knight to d4.
Wait, well, why didn't the king take it? That's odd, because when you move the knight to here, my knight will take it.
It thinks that your knight's going to take me.
Let's see, let's see what it thinks. It thinks my knight will take, right?
Yeah.
All right, yeah. I'll take and then check you.
Yeah, I don't know why I would...
Yeah, it was like free knight for me.
B1.
Okay, that's interesting. I'll check.
It thought you were going to move your knight here, which I don't know.
I don't know if there's any strategic advantage with that.
It's putting it here.
Okay, that's not invalid.
This is the endgame problem, where the computer breaks down because it thinks it can move into check. So for now, I just reduce its look-ahead horizon, so it fixes the issue. Okay, so now it says move king to c1,
Okay,
which makes more sense to me.
yes. Yeah, I'll try to move this queen up.
King to c2, that's a valid move.
C2 is not valid because.
I need to reduce the look-ahead window even more. Okay, we'll do that one.
And then I'll move.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't think you're gonna take my queen. I don't know why it thinks that. It's an obvious move.
Yeah.
Say queen to e1 now.
Yeah. Queen takes and check at the same time.
King to a2.
A2 is not valid.
That's not valid. Reduce the look-ahead horizon even more. King to b1. I think that's valid.
Yes.
That is the only thing I can do.
That's what I want to do. Yes.
On the g4.
Let's check you here. The valid move is going here.
It wants to go to e2.
Yeah, and that is a checkmate move.
Okay, so you're going queen to a1.
Yeah, and that's a checkmate.
All right. Thank you very much. Afterwards, Long shared his insights about how the computer played.
Yeah, so I think in the first stage of the game, it moves pretty defensively.
Yeah.
It actually avoided my traps. I think my trap is like about 3 or 4 moves ahead. But I think it did pretty well until like deteriorate after it tried to move the kings to the right side of the ball, which is very like open and empty for my rooks and for my bishop and knight to attack. In the end, there are some wrong states, so I don't know why it got into that. We probably want to check some asking condition to make sure that there's no move to invalid state.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for doing this, putting up with it.
So thanks, Peter.
Well, that seemed to work. Well, I'm glad to hear that the computer avoided Long's trap, but I'm frustrated with some of the silly moves it made that lost it material. We recorded the game in Lee chess and evaluated the computer's position at every move. As you can see, it goes down right from the start and never recovers. Lee chess also evaluates the performance of the computer. It had an overall accuracy of 84%, whereas Long had an accuracy of 92%. Ultimately, the computer lost to Long in 31 moves. Next up, I challenged my friend Bret, who had a lot of interest in analyzing the performance of the computer.
So I'm Bret, and I've been playing chess since I was 5. I have a United States Chess Federation rating of about 2,000. My rapid rating on League chess is 2,200. I play chess every single day, and I study every single day, and I'm trying to improve, but I've basically been at the same level for the last 3 decades. Well, this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm anxious to see what it's like to play against it.
Okay, you ready to go?
Yes.
All right.
All right.
It's not doing what I expected, but that's okay. Pawn to a3. It's not what I expected.
The last 2 moves in a row were
Poor choices.
yeah. Okay, bxc3.
It's gonna put the rook here.
That's really surprising.
It's trying to cover, but who cares? I should have moved the knight out of the way.
Right. cxd2. Check.
Gonna take, and it's gonna use the bishop.
Okay, that makes sense.
I don't think it doesn't seem great.
The immediate problem is that this is only protected by 1 pawn.
Yeah.
And it's attacked by 2 different pieces. So it's just gonna trade and then I win the pawn afterwards. Oh, I see. It has a little trap. So it can actually move its queen here and check me, and that would be a double attack on this piece and the king. That's interesting, but that won't matter if I take with the knight first, because then when I take with the bishop, it'll be check. So knight takes b4.
Pawn takes b4.
bx b4 check.
It is going to do the worst thing I think it could do. It's going to use the rook. It's going to go rook d2.
Okay. It might be thinking that it's setting a trap for me, because if I move my knight here in order to win material, then it can put queen here, which is a double attack on my king, and the bishop, that's a hanging bishop. So I would move out of check and then lose my bishop. So we won't allow that. Instead, I will develop my last minor piece, stopping the double attack.
It was plotting...
Queen a4?
Yeah, queen a4.
Yeah, that would have been me falling into the trap.
It's going to move the king to f2.
That actually makes sense, and I'll tell you why.
That does?
Before the king moved off of e1, the rook was pinned. Because if the rook would have moved, then that would have been moving into check. Even prior to that, I could have taken the rook with my bishop, which would be a win of material for me. But I wanted even more. And the way that I would have got more is if your king would have stayed there, I could have moved my knight here, adding another attacker to the piece which is pinned. And now instead of just winning the exchange, which would be a rook for a bishop, now I could actually take with the knight. So an old adage is whenever a piece is pinned, attack it with everything you got because it can't move away. And so now the rook is no longer pinned, which means I better take it right now. So bishop takes d2.
Knight to d2, so we take.
Yeah. And naturally, the computer avoided the trap of taking with the queen, in which case I would have had knight here, forking the queen and the king. Castle.
Castle? Do people castle in every game?
I'll tell you right now, if you add the castling option to its repertoire, that's going to be a huge bump, all by itself. Do nothing else, and that alone is going to give it a big bump. That is definitely the low-hanging fruit.
Fine. It does this.
Yeah, well,
I think is terrible.
the thing is, it doesn't seem to know what to do with rooks, and that's one of the reasons why castling is going to be a huge benefit. Because rooks like to develop on open files, and open files typically happen in the center of the board. Most often, the center files are the first ones to open, and that's where the rooks want to be. Sometimes when you castle and then the F file opens, and the rook is just automatically placed perfectly. If you really wanted to have a better algorithm for rooks, you should be asking the question of, how do I get to a file that's already open and go there? I just have these two passed pawns over here, and I'm probably just gonna start pushing this guy. Passed pawn with a rook behind it is the ideal configuration. Passed pawn is a pawn that has no enemy pawns on either adjacent file. Nimzovich has this great quote. He says, passed pawns are criminals which should be kept under lock and key. Mere police surveillance is not sufficient.
Okay.
Meaning that you can't just keep an eye on it. You need to outpost a piece in front of it so that it can't move any further. But when you have a pair of adjacent passed pawns, then whatever piece you put here, I can just kick it with the pawn. Now that's a good move because it allows the light squared bishop to have some scope.
This one here?
Yeah.
It opens it up.
Yeah.
B5.
Queen to E1. That seems odd.
That does seem odd. Apparently the program has not heard the quote from Nimzovich.
It has not heard the quote from anything.
A4. So I want to march my pawns, but I also want to do it in the most efficient way. And so what I'm doing is I'm keeping these two squares, which are the only places where your knight could advance, are covered by pawns.
King to E2.
Yeah.
That seems pretty terrible.
It does seem pretty terrible.
The king is now blocking the queen.
Well, and more importantly, it's blocking the bishop. I'm just gonna, steady as she goes, march my two pawns in lockstep with each other.
King to D1. Yeah, I think it's trying to get out of the way.
Queen C7.
This is unstoppable.
Really?
Oh yeah. This position is just dead loss for white. Has been for a while.
What if someone takes this pawn?
How? It would take you a couple of moves to put your first attacker on here, and by that time I could have brought my queen and my rook over to protect it. You could put the world champion on that side, and he will lose.
Queen to F2. That seems like immediately doesn't provide great option.
At least from here, if the knight ever moves, it has control of the second rank, which might actually be kind of advantageous. Rook F C8.
So that rook is now protecting your queen.
He's adding life to it. So before, my queen couldn't come next to your king because the king would simply just capture the queen. But now I can because he's backed up by the rook. Queen C1, check.
So I can't move here. It's the only thing I can do here.
That's the only legal move. That's the only legal move.
And it doesn't do that. So it has trouble at this point now. It says it's going to take C1.
No, that's not a legal move.
So time to reduce the look ahead again.
You need to filter your candidate move list. The result of every candidate move cannot be that you're still in check. Filtering your candidate move list is actually going to prune your decision tree and make the whole thing more efficient anyway.
But I can get it to work now because I just said look ahead one move and it said, oh, I'm going to move to E2.
Yeah.
So I've just reduced its look ahead.
And then that's made.
Afterwards, Bret walked through key parts of the game.
I want to castle on the king side, so getting my knight out to f6 is the first step to make that happen. That move makes sense because I'm contesting this square, which can no longer be protected by a pawn for white. That's considered a hole or a weak square. The second best thing that white can do is to contest the control of that square with a piece, which is what the knight move does. And so now I'm just doing a pawn break because my dark squared bishop hasn't developed yet. And if you capture me on c5, then I just recapture it with the bishop, which is a perfect development move. And then my bishop would be on this diagonal, which would be awesome.
But now where can you go from there?
Doesn't matter. I control an open diagonal.
Even if currently there's no enemy there, it's good to have it because now I can't enter into that diagonal.
Right. By definition, this is an extremely active bishop because of the fact that it's controlling squares inside your camp. All of these squares inside your camp are places you cannot put something of value. That means my bishop is very, very active. So if I'm controlling squares inside your camp, those are great squares for me to be controlling. The computer correctly did not take c5 because that would have just helped me. So I'm putting more pressure on this piece. In situations like this, you count how many defenders of that piece are there. 2. How many attackers of that piece are there? 2. So in order to maintain material equality, you must at the minimum have at least as many defenders as there are attackers. In addition to that, they have to be in the right order. If your main defender is a queen and I'm taking it with a knight, that's no good either.
So where did it fall apart for the computer?
B4, you can see the evaluation just dropped, just caved. Okay, on that move. Because it's just giving me a free pawn, and I have 1, 2, 3 pieces all attacking b4, and you have exactly 1 pawn protecting it. So you're just handing me a pawn. And now it's giving me another free pawn. So the evaluation caved again. This is the pawn that's completely unprotected. So naturally I just take it. And what it should have done is move this knight out of the way of the pawn. It just said, here, take another piece, and watch the evaluation. If the graph would have been above the x-axis, that would have meant that the evaluation was in favor of white.
Never in favor.
So this was really the turning point.
That's the turning point.
Something extraordinary is going to have to happen for the game to turn around.
Then we talked about what I could do to improve the computer's performance. Maybe I put too much emphasis on the look-ahead nature of it and not as much on the evaluation.
I think that if you had a better evaluation algorithm and it was only looking 2 moves deep, I think that would be better overall than if it was looking 4 moves deep and it didn't evaluate very well.
Then we discussed what those evaluation improvements might be.
Yeah, I think a really big improvement would be just simply adjusting the value of the pieces based on their activity. How many squares and how good are these squares? You know, like a rook on the back rank has 7 squares it can go to if the back rank's empty. But those squares aren't very valuable because they're all on my side. But a rook on an open file still has only 7 squares it can go to. But the last 2 squares are extremely valuable because they're deep inside the enemy camp.
Finally, Bret gave his overall appraisal of the chess engine.
It's really hard to estimate the ELO of an opponent, especially after only 1 game. If I had to evaluate this, I'm going to guess 1,000, maybe.
Well, thanks so much for the game.
Well, thanks, Peter. That was really fun. Yeah.
Was it? It was fun?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Leechess also evaluated the performance of the computer in this game. It had an overall accuracy of 81%, whereas Bret had an accuracy of 99%. Ultimately, the computer lost to Bret in 22 moves. Thanks to Long and Bret for taking time to help me evaluate my chess bot. Thank you! Which brings us to you. I challenge you to a game of chess. If you'd like to play a game of correspondence chess, you too can play against the computer right here on YouTube. I'll even let you play white. How can they play against a robot here on YouTube? Just create a comment on this video with your opening move. You can use official chess notation, or you can describe which piece you're moving, including the rank and file of the square. I will reply to your comment with the move that my computer has calculated, as well as a link to the current state of the board. Then you can reply and so on. Some people have already started doing this on my previous video. If anyone tries to interfere with your comment thread, I'll remove them. Start your own game! There will definitely be a delay, but I'll try to respond as consistently as I can. How long are you gonna keep replying to these comments? I don't know. If you're watching this video in the future, check for a pinned comment indicating if I'm still doing this. So, are you happy with the ChessBot? Well, I was glad that it was able to actually play both games, even though it lost both times, and it was losing for basically the whole game. I like the fact that it was able to avoid traps that were laid for it, but I was frustrated when it didn't take advantage of seemingly obvious attack moves. Are you going to improve it? Well, we'll see. If I did, I think I would need to add castling. Not castling! Yeah, it looks like it's far more important than I realized. Also, I would change the valid candidate moves so as to get out of check successfully. And I would add even more chess smarts to the computer, like evaluating pieces based on their activity, or understanding how to outnumber an enemy when attacking a contested square. If you're interested in looking at my code, it's really hacky since I didn't have a lot of time, but it's on GitHub for download. The link is in the description. But one thing is certain, I was definitely not able to build a pure chess bot without any chess smarts. I had to introduce more chess smarts in order to get the computer to play at all. It looks like there's more to playing chess than just brute forcing numbers.